All right. So for today's Lunch and Learn, we are joined by Abby Bennett and Courtney Elliott, and they are going to talk to us today about morning meeting, building community, building relationships with the new challenges that we're facing this year of having students who may be joining our classrooms virtually on the computer screen and with students who have to keep physical distance from one another. So I'm going to turn it over to them.
All right. So again, I'm Abby Bennett, behavior specialist at Proctor Elementary. So over the summer, building relationships has been one of the key things that PBIS is talking about and is going to be the forefront of what we really need to look at. As kids are entering, not being with us for 5 months. One way we've always built relationships in the classroom is through the morning meeting portion of our day. Melinda, do you currently do morning meeting in your class?
I do.
Okay, perfect.
I have done morning meetings everywhere. This is my first time at Pulteney. I'm in for Amy Kelly till Thanksgiving.
Awesome. And I only asked that. I know that Alexa and Paula and Courtney all have done some semblance of morning meeting. The reason why I asked that is because there's certain components to the morning meeting that are critical and vital. So when you have the morning message, obviously the morning message can stay the same. Greeting the students. Then you have the morning greeting, and I racked my brain around different morning greetings. I did a lot of research. We did a video for our kids. I'm going to share, I have a folder, and Melinda, I actually will have Corey share it with you later today. I probably could share it too, I think. But it's labeled morning meeting for Rona. I just wanted to liven it up a little bit.
That's good.
But there's a lot of documents and a lot of resources on how to conduct your morning meeting. So I'm going to actually share my screen and go through the documents that are on there.
I found some games that are distance games that are like, sharing information about you, but also like are able to stay apart from each other.
Looks like we lost Abby. Give her a minute to come back. Courtney, is there anything that you wanted to do or say while we're waiting for Abby to come back?
Yeah, I can talk for a quick minute while I wait for Abby. So what I did this summer with Abby is I went through the morning meeting book. So the responsive classroom morning meeting book. And I just kind of went through and looked at what games could be done socially distant, what activities could be done, what greetings could be done socially distant, and then just made notes. And the game or at greeting couldn't be done socially distant, I kind of wrote notes about how I could accommodate it to have kids stay in their own space. So that's something that I did. There's actually a whole section in the morning meeting book where in the beginning of the year, you're not supposed to have students touching each other anyway, because they might not be comfortable enough to have that point of touching. So they had a bunch of suggestions for ways kids could greet each other. So like a salute or a peace sign or an air five. So there was a bunch of suggestions there in that morning meeting book for the beginning of the year for how kids could greet each other that you could just use all year in your classroom, because obviously we can't touch each other at this point in time. And there's that, Miss Bennett.
Welcome back, Ms. Bennett. Abby, you are muted.
All All right, again, I apologize. Am I presented now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the folder. So in here are different social greetings. So if I open up this, it takes you to a editable Google Doc presentation, and it's all different types of greetings. So there is becoming creative on how, because our kids have to sit, obviously, the 3 to 6 feet and have to be facing the same way. So a brief turn to each other to do these things is okay. But it's still super important to have that social interaction and that greeting. So the bow curtsy, this was kind of cool, a thumbs up, and you can get pretty fancy. You can do the wink and the a foot bump. You can do a foot bump because they are still maintaining social distance. So there's that. You can add your own. So that was one of the documents. The next document are the other part of morning meeting is the share part. And this is super important because you can't do the games and stuff as much because we're limited to the amount of games that we can. I know Courtney has gone through and found a bunch of games. And like, what do you like to?
Hey, Corey, can you hear her? Or is it just me?
Hey, Abby, can you hear me?
Enhanced discussions, the virus has been different. So keeping it to questions that all kids can answer is important. So there's serious ones, and then we have the lighthearted ones. What would you name a peanut butter if you could call peanut butter and sandwich peanut butter something else? What would you call it? So just fun things to get kids interacting with each other, get kids talking is a way to increase that morning meeting. We have there are resources. I put in here some PBIS resources on how to conduct morning meetings, how to have all parts of morning meetings, the importance to it. So it's really just taking what we do every day and tweaking it just a little bit, having all the same aspects of it. Because you can play charades in morning meeting. You can play, Courtney's going to talk about other games that you can do, but maybe the teacher's just in charge of the materials instead of the student. So I'm going to pass it over to Courtney. Courtney's going to talk about the morning meeting, the morning meeting book from Responsive Classroom and what she did over the summer with that. So I'm going to stop presenting, Courtney.
All right, thanks, Abby. So one thing when I went through the book is I looked at, first of all, which ones could be done socially distant, and then which ones can I accommodate to be done socially distant. So games that involved just kind of talking were games that obviously you don't have to accommodate for. So for example, there's a game called Race to, and then you can put any number in there. It's let's say we call it Race to 100. The kids would sit at their desks and you're going to skip count by 2s to 100. Okay. But the community building part of that game is that the same two people can't talk at the same time, and the answer has to be correct. So if any of that occurs, you go back to the beginning. So as a group, the kids are trying to get to 100 or 20 or whatever number you've put out to them, 1,000. but they can't talk at the same time. So they kind of have to practice that skill of waiting their turn and letting someone else go and answer that question. So that's an example of a game that didn't have to be accommodated. But then there were games like, I play a game in my classroom called Hot Cold, where in a traditional year, one student leaves the room, another student takes an object in the classroom and hides it somewhere. That student comes back in the classroom and the class will tell them if they're hot or cold to where that object is. Okay, so coronavirus, you could socially distance that game by the teacher's the one who hides the object. You hide it in one spot of the room. And the kid who's trying to figure out where it is closes their eyes instead of leaves the classroom. So there are ways that you can kind of tweak some of those games. Another thing that I worked on was morning message question. So I found a whole thing on Teachers Pay Teachers of 180 days of morning message questions because we have staggered start. When kids come in the morning, they're going to have an expectation to answer that morning message question in their journal. And then we can use it as a share out later on. And that way it's splitting up that my kids aren't just independent reading for that whole 30 minutes when kids are coming into the classroom. They have another thing that they can work on and that they can do before they move into independent reading. So building that routine and then making it a part of your morning meeting. So like, for example, I think the first day of school's morning meeting question is, what are you excited about for this week? And then like, there's like lighthearted questions, like Abby said, there's like, do you like to play outside? Why or why not? But then there's like other questions like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or how are you feeling right now? Like things that like you can have more in-depth kind of social and emotional conversations with as the year progresses and goes along. So that was also really helpful. Yeah, so really it was just going through and thinking about what do I usually do in my classroom and how can I accommodate that at 3 to 6 feet. That was really just what I focused on. And then too, virtually, because we're going to have kids virtually meets into our classroom. I'm going to have 4 kids that are going to be on the computer with us every morning during morning meeting. So how do I include them? How do I make sure they're a part of it? So just being intentional about games and greetings that they can be a part of and making sure the kids in your classroom know, oh, okay, like so-and-so's online. I need to greet them. They can be greeted too, or I can choose them to go next in this game too. So I think that was super important. And then Wednesdays too, everyone's virtual. So morning meeting on virtually on Wednesdays. Scavenger hunts were a big thing we did back when we went virtual last year. My kids love to do scavenger hunts. They love to tell each other like, okay, go in your house and find toilet paper. And like everyone ran off to go find toilet paper. We had a lot of fun with that. We played Pictionary a lot on the computer. Kahoot, we did Kahoot via the computer. So I displayed it on my screen and the kids went in on their screens and were able to answer questions. That was something we made work. So just keeping in mind that on Wednesdays, we're all going to be virtual. So how can we still have that morning meeting as a touch point for me to see all my kids in the morning and kind of get them ready for their day, even though it's going to be virtual.
Courtney, where is that list of questions?
I got it from Teacher Pay Teacher. So I just went to Teacher Pay Teacher and typed in morning meeting slides or morning meeting questions and a whole bunch of options came up.
And Melinda, I'll share you I'll share with you the folder that I wrote.
Okay, great.
That I compiled a bunch of stuff, and that actually has a bunch of questions that you can ask. And I think the biggest thing is when you're incorporating those distance learning kids is they're going to be eventually, hopefully, coming back to the classroom. So, you know, using morning meeting to go through your routines and your that kind of stuff that all kids will be there for. To really build that relationship, you know, getting to know each other so that they, you know, feel comfortable to ask questions when they are remote and not remote. And just like we do in the classroom, but to be honest with you, if there's any time to do a morning meeting and do it in building community, this is probably one of the most important times. And that's why I like those questions and the sharing questions and those thought-provoking questions, because we can learn so much about people with some of those questions and just even silly things. But everybody can do it no matter where they are. Everybody can do it 6 feet away. Everybody can do it facing forward. Same with, you know, in the games like charades or, you know, there's a bunch of games that you can do rock, paper, scissors. You can do rock, paper, scissors 6 feet apart, you know. So just something to keep it lighthearted, but building and really focusing on building that culture of, you know, that positive classroom culture.
Yeah,
Another, oops, sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, I found a game that they're telling a story. You know, like I went to the store, and then the next person says, "Why?" And then I went to the store because I had to get bread. Well, why? You know, and then they end up with this whole big long paragraph that kind of relates to each other.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool.
Um,
But and so I mean I think that's it. Really is about tailoring what you do already. I gave a bunch of do I think that people should definitely use all this? No. Are they great resources? Yes. It's just really about getting teachers to think about this can still be done. This can be done remotely. This can be done in the classroom. This can be done as a hybrid. This can be done, and it can be done easily without much thinking. But there are resources out there. There's a ton of resources out there. Responsive Classroom waited to the last minute to give their resources, so we had to do a little more digging. But Responsive Classroom has come out with more resources. So
Another thing I really thought about too was that for me, relationships are a big part of my classroom. That's like what I like to focus on within those first 6 weeks of school. I think it's really important with relationships before everything else. Like that's my big kind of platform. So I was very nervous about what's that going to look like at 6 feet apart. And so I was thinking about all the things we do to build community in the beginning of the year. Like we play Don't Cross the Wobbly Bridge where the kids have to hold hands. I was just like, well, how can I take that and change it? So something I kind of thought about was having them get to know each other more. Like kind of like Abby said with those questions was like, how do we dig deeper into getting them to know about each other? So one thing I found that was cool was it's called 3 About Me trivia. So you have the kids submit the answers to 3 questions. So the questions I chose were just like, what's your favorite food? What's your favorite color? And one fun fact about yourself. And the kids can submit that on a Flipgrid that's just private to you, or they can do it in a Google Doc or on a Google form. And then one day I'm going to live stream my kids in who are at home. My kids in the classroom are going to have their whiteboards, and we're going to play a trivia game show of, okay, whose favorite food do you think is pizza? Whose favorite food do you think is chicken nuggets? And the kids like have to like say who they think it is. And then like if you get it right, you get a point. So like it just like kind of, I had to think outside the box. I had to say, what have I always done? And how can I change it so my kids are safe, but they're still learning about each other and building that classroom community and that relationship.
Paula, do you have any questions? Alexa?
I'm here. I'm okay. Everything makes
All right,
sense.
perfect.
Thank you.
All right. Melinda, any more questions? I mean, anything you guys want to share? Or?
All right, still getting used to the new laptop. Can't get my mute on and off. Yeah, no, that's kind of been where I am today. It's perfect today because I've been having little mini meltdowns about how I'm going to relate to them and how I'm going to build the community. And like Courtney said, that's how I've always, I've been doing this in some way. Hey, Mr. Zoe, for 25 years. And I'm like, how am I going to get my remote learners and my 6 feet apart learners and everyone together? How are we going to work together? So I was just wanted to check in here. So that's all, but I'm good. So.
And if you, Melinda, and if you ever need help, you can contact us. You can email me if you have questions about things or need something looked into. I don't mind helping people out. So, and Courtney's a great resource. She's done a lot of work around this too this summer. I kind of roped her into helping me do a lot of this around. But it's super important. And like you said, like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? But when you look at it, it is super easy to do.
Yeah. So, all righty. Well, I'm going to head out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Melinda, something else that I might recommend as well is, have you gone to the website that the coaches put out with all the modules?
No, I've been flat out at this
email
point.
the link so that you don't have to go searching for it.
That would be awesome.
There is a topic of social emotional learning, and we created a module on morning meetings in there.
Uh-huh.
And Abby had mentioned that Responsive Classroom put something out. I've linked it into that module.
Oh, great.
And the great thing about Responsive Classroom's document is that this is so overwhelming. So they've kind of written up a 2-week or a 10-day schedule for teachers.
Nice.
You could easily just follow, and they give you recommendations for greetings and activities, and they're intended to be for students who are virtual or who cannot be close together. So they've kind of done the work for you for the first 2 weeks. So taking a look at that might help you figure out how you want to structure morning meeting going forward.
Yeah, I've been Responsive Classroom trained, so
Perfect.
it's something I hold near and dear. So, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Melinda. I appreciate it.
Anybody else have questions, comments for Abby and Courtney? All
You
right.
can come see me if you do.
So any questions, get in touch with Abby or Courtney. They're happy to help. Alexa and Paula, you guys already know that.
We're lucky. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you,
Alrighty.
and Courtney.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.